Welcome to Tech Topics brought to you by Cybervenger. We help keep small businesses stay protected and compliant with cutting-edge cybersecurity and IT solutions.
Hello everyone and welcome back. My name is Andy. I'm the managing consultant for Cybervenger. Today I'm going to do a breakdown of a cyber attack that happened to an actual customer of ours. And we're going to talk about the mistakes they made ahead of time, mistakes they made during, and what you could do to prevent, and some observations about the general state of ransomware and what the bad guys are doing today. Because I observed several things that are quite different and unique, and it kind of changed the landscape for me. So, spoiler alert, we won! We got their data back, and we stopped the bad guys, and that's a big victory for us. But the downside is the customer, much against our advice, didn't do a lot of things we told them to do, didn't take preparations. In fact, they were completely wide open and vulnerable, and I was amazed it took this long for them to get hacked, really. But because we got lucky, and because we understand security and IT, we were able to rescue them, and there's going to be a breakdown here of what they should be doing, what you should be doing, and some interesting ideas that we thought of. So, what happened? First, I'm not going to talk about who the customer is. It's just professional ethics. I'm not going to name names. I'm not even going to talk about the industry they're in. I will, however, say that they are big enough and advanced enough and have worked with us long enough that they really should have known better. This particular customer has around a dozen locations. They were using our RMM tool that included monitoring, that included antivirus. We, of course, advise our customers that antivirus really isn't enough anymore. You really need EDR. Our product that we like is N-Sight's Enable product, and the EDR that they have bundled with it is SentinelOne. It's a pretty good, reputable product. It's a good, middle-of-the-road kind of product. Not the cheapest of the cheap, not the most expensive. It's relatively budget-friendly, and it's very effective at responding to threats rather than just scanning for bits of code that match your signatures. It's, true EDR. So I tried to get them to buy that. They said no. They were using our antivirus at least, and then they canceled that. They canceled all of our services. Not because they didn't like us, but they're having financial trouble. I understand this, but there are ways to save money. There are places where you can cut expenses and you can be very capital efficient. I'm a big guy about being capital efficient. I used to be a bargain kind of guy until I realized that bargains can sometimes cost you more than the expensive thing. I've kind of got a balance now. But I've always understood there is a point where too cheap is too cheap. And these guys blew right past it. Some of the things they did wrong that maybe you're doing wrong that you definitely don't want to do. So besides the lack of antivirus, the lack of reporting and control through an RMM solution, ain't nothing. The real killer that got them was, what got them infected is they were using a remote access tool. The IT guy was, or one IT guy there, managing all these sites. The poor guy's overwhelmed, outnumbered, outgunned, underpaid, unappreciated by management, by the owners. And it's just a recipe for disaster. But they was using a remote control solution. The solution they were using kind of doesn't matter. This could have happened to anybody. He got hacked because he wasn't using two-factor authentication. Now, a little shame on him. When he was using our RMM tool, we mandate two-factor. We don't let our customers use our tool unless they're running two-factor authentication. You can't set up an account with us. And this is kind of why. So we're not 100% sure if they broke into the 365 email first or into the remote access tool. I think they may have gotten the email first and used that to do a password reset. I digress there. But the point is, they got in, there was no two-factor. Not that two-factor is bulletproof, but that would have stopped them there. And then once they got in, there was no auditing, no alerting, and it's just a pretty vanilla remote access tool. Then it remoted straight on into all the servers and began to do the damage. The backups now, this is a ransomware attack, right? The encrypted things, they were unable to restore from backup because their backups was a very inexpensive and very under-featured program, and they were backing up directly to a USB drive plugged into the physical server that was backing up. So picture the landscape of the server. You've got a dozen locations. Each location had its own dedicated server. Could be good, right? Different security boundaries, and it's a chain. So they had each location having their own copy of their main line of business application, database, and all that. They made all the passwords the same for every location. So any security boundary isolation that you might have had got ruined because all the passwords are standardized exactly the same, and it had been the same password for years. Certainly for as long as we've been working them. Again, stuff I've told them about, stuff that just got backburnered. They've understaffed their IT department. They didn't have to pay to have this done. They had an IT guy, right? But they didn't have enough IT people, so they got tech debt. You get all these backlog tasks and jobs that should be done that aren't getting done because your people are overworked. It's a very serious danger in pushing your IT too hard. I see it all the time. Got to give your crew enough room to get their job done. And you got to hold them accountable. The IT department is not always the hero. Sometimes they're slackers. Not the case in this place. So they didn't change the password anywhere, not for years, and it was the same everywhere. So once the person broke in and figured out the password, indeed, I'm pretty sure, because I've seen this before when I've done work with them, they left some of the desktops unlocked. So when they remoted into the desktop, it's right there, admin rights sitting out there. And once you have admin rights on a desktop, it's nowhere near as hard to get a dump of the administrator password and figure it out. So there's a lot of, once you get a copy of that, and I think they might have even, as we were digging through some of the files when they encrypted things, I think there was even a password spreadsheet. It was named passwords something. So I'm pretty sure they got all the passwords that way too, so it wouldn't have mattered. Something like KeePass that we recommend on this channel often would have helped prevent that. They would have opened the KeePass file and not known the master password. You memorize the master password, you keep everything in your locked KeePass file, and you hide it. Even if the bad guy gets it, it's encrypted in AES-256, virtually unbreakable, at least as long as you use good passwords. But I digress on that point. More back to what happened. So once they got in, what they did that was both dumb and smart, they didn't realize that this company was as cheap and unprotected as they were. They tried to use tools that were very common that wouldn't trip off an antivirus. In fact, I'm not sure SentinelOne would have even caught this. They logged in over a remote access tool just like anybody should. Nothing suspicious there. Then what they did is they created a zip archive using 7. So they downloaded 7-zip, they installed it, they created the archive, and the archive they used, they created a zip, and it's an archive. So it's pulling the data off the disk and then encrypting it. What ended up saving them is that they use this tool, because this tool deletes the old file and then copies it and encrypts it. That's key. A lot of the encryption tools I've seen will encrypt the actual contents of the file, so there's nothing left behind. Now, for those who don't know, when you delete a file, what you really do is you just erase an entry in the file allocation table, so the file is gone from record. It's not gone. It's still there. There are lots of tools that can undelete files. I'm not even talking recycling bin. You can empty recyclable bin, and you could still find stuff, sometimes years later. It's another security problem. It's why you wipe drives. In this case, what they did, though, we caught them, or I should say that the IT guy that worked there was remoting in to check early morning because he'd done patching on the Sunday night. Good for him. Good man. And he was double checking things, and he caught the desktop being moved. He saw the files going across, and he canceled everything. He called me, and I told him, pull the plug on every server you got. So we acted quickly. Our fast response was a major contributing factor to why we were able to recover. The fact that they were using a tool that didn't actually encrypt the contents of the file, but rather deleted the file, copied the file, encrypted, and then deleted the old copy. That's important because you end up with the file essentially in two different places, right? One of them is unencrypted, just deleted, missing. The other one is encrypted in the zip. Now, the zip that functioned had moved files rather than just copying them. It was partway done. And the files that had gotten processed is like 50% done in this one server's case and thereabouts in the others. Those files were missing from the drive and unavailable, including some critical files like database files. And we were unable to extract the contents of that zip. You could browse the contents of the zip. You could see the folder structure, the file names, but you couldn't extract them without the password. We tried. We gave it a fake password. We tried guessing things like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 and password just to see, man, maybe the guy was dumb. Sometimes you get lucky, right? And it extracted it, but it was garbage. So moving on to that, there was enough disk space left over, fortunately, that the original files, most of them anyway, were not overwritten by the new data. Because they were creating the zip on the volume that they're deleting from. So that's dangerous in terms of file deletion recovery. That's the trick. If you're going to be recovering deleted files, you don't want to touch the disk. You do not want to write that disk at all until you've recovered everything. That's how we did it. We ran our recovery tool. In fact, the recovery tool we used is something called Recover. Wow, what a bargain. It was $30. I use this tool all the time. And I used the free one that comes on Hiren's boot disk for little stuff. But it was an emergency, and I'm like, well, this is working great. Let's pop for the advanced one to get the folder structure and all that. And it recovered most of the folder structure. Some it didn't. Some I had to kind of guess and rebuild it. But we had the folder structure from the zip file. We were able to see that. And we had the files. So I was able to cross-reference and rebuild the data structure, restore their database, and get it working again. There was a little trouble, but the vendor was able to come through. Between the line of business vendor, between us, between dumb luck, they managed to recover. So that's how we were able to get back, and that's what they did, and which is very hopeful for those who get hit with ransomware. Now, let's talk a little bit about what they demanded. The ransom was for 15 Bitcoin. Well, Bitcoin is, I think, $30,000 a piece right now. So that's about $450,000. These guys are hurting. You know, I'm charging them $5 a month for an antivirus solution and RMM, and that was too much for them. So I don't know where they would have gotten $450,000 from. That's a terrifying amount of money for a company that's on the edge. They took a huge hit during COVID. They were really hurt bad by COVID. They've never really recovered yet. But they cheaped too much. So I couldn't touch their backups. Right, all their data was on the USB drive attached to the computer. It was so easy for the bad guy to find. It's right there. It's not only can the bad guy get to it, it's convenient. They made it convenient for the bad guy to destroy it. It drives me nuts. And I've told them this. What I've since suggested that they do, because again, budget is still a serious concern. They did not have to pay the ransom, by the way, because we were able to recover enough. Some stuff was missing, but largely was not super important or easily reproducible by the staff. So, and they recovered like 99% of their data. I really got lucky. I suggested that then, this is my suggestion to any of you in a similar budget crunch, go buy a Buffalo Link station. NAS, not USB, because you could put it elsewhere on the network, away from the machine, which is nice just from a fire standpoint. Forget ransomware, where there's a fire in the server room or a theft or something. You can get it outside the server room, so it's a little ways away. That helps. And it's on the network, not directly connected to the server. So the server doesn't immediately enumerate it to anybody casually browsing. Then we're going to use our Acronis product. Acronis puts an agent on there, and it's cloud controlled. And it's not priced per gigabit, because they had a lot of data. They got large data sets. Each of those servers has like 2 terabytes on it. And that's expensive, backing up to the cloud, 2 terabytes, especially with application support. I did a backup video explaining the different types of backups. You guys can take a look at that and understand a little more background if this is going over your head. But we use Acronis, put an agent on it, and then the jobs are running from the cloud, so you don't know where it's going or what the password to the NAS is. Change the NAS password from the default admin to something that's not, easily guessable, like some address, 65389, pick a number, or whatever you want, just as long as it's not easily guessable. And then the password should be, 10 characters long, complex, and all that, and unique per site. And then Acronis can keep track of all that, and Acronis can go ahead and do the backups to the local drive on the other side. And, we were going to charge them $50 a month per server for unlimited data. Unlimited because they're providing the storage. But the storage device for 2 terabyte NAS it's $120, $125, something like that. Your mileage might vary. Maybe you know a better site to buy it, but that's dirt cheap in the land of backup, especially for a company that almost had to pay $450,000. I'm still convincing them to do this, by the way, and it's frustrating. But that's neither here nor there. That's a good emergency defense. A better defense would be that, plus replicating out to the cloud. So the data is completely unreachable to the hacker. So it's someplace safe. You want to make sure the cloud as a provider, you want to know where your data is going. This particular customer is not under a compliance standard. That's some low-grade stuff, but they're not like NIST. They're not a NIST customer, so the data does not have to be in U.S. shores. You got options. You could put an S3 or something like that, as long as it's cloud managed and you use a unique password for the cloud. You do have to think about how passwords can get reset, because if you reset by your work email, someone compromises your work email, that's kind of a hacking vector. This is kind of, I think, how they got in their initial breach. Once you break into 365, and everybody uses 365, right, these days, so it's a kind of a draw from hackers. They want to attack this. If you sign up for services, so that initial email goes to your email and you forget about it. But well, that email is a giant list that enumerates all the services you have. And then the attacker knows that, okay, these are all the services I can get into because this email is the back door for all of them. You saw why protecting your 365 account is so important. So if you're going to breach there, change your password, get two-factor on there. It's pretty important to get on top of that. So you want to be careful about that with your backup solution. You don't want your email address to be a way to get into your backup solution, because if you can log in your backup solution, then you're toast again. So that's kind of what we would do differently. That's what happened. Other things we're doing is I am writing a script right now that I may very well publish to others to use. I'm writing a script check for Insight Enable that will check the status of the shadow copy option on your disk. And if those of you have ever read or used previous versions, built in the Microsoft operating system, it's kind of like a snapshot thing. You could roll back deleted files. And it's the first thing that ransomware people turn off, because it's not only can you recover, but it's convenient to recover. And they don't want to make things convenient or you won't pay. So they go for that. And it's a really easy thing to monitor. PowerShell script will just check it every 5 minutes, and if it gets turned off, it'll throw an alert, and then we can immediately know that something fishy is going on, and we can respond. That kind of learning, leaving traps, tripwires all over the place that a ransomware person would trip, and it's not likely to generate a false positive. Like a high CPU load or high disk load, lots of stuff does that. Backups do that. It could be a patch you're doing. It's hard to use that to warn you that someone's in there encrypting things. In this case, the software is innocuous. I mean, how many people create a zip file all the time? It's run-of-the-mill stuff. It's very clever. I mean, I like eSentire or Carbon Black. A lot of these fancy EDRs would probably fail to flag that. But if you were to detect the snapshots being turned off on your volumes, that is foolproof, and you don't need money. You just need a simple script and a monitoring tool. You could add that on. That's something you can kind of homegrown if you were, on a tight budget. But those are the kind of monitoring that we do for companies as well, and we do some creative solutions. Now, I'm going on to come up with more observations about what else we could do. I just wanted to put out there my observations while they're fresh in my mind, hope tip off somebody else as to what's going on. I also did a monitor that warned me if any of their servers have 7-zip installed, because it's not installed now. I'll install that everywhere. But if it gets installed, it'll do an email alert and immediately warn us. We know that's not supposed to be on the servers. That would only get there by a bad guy. That's a tell. We're going to add the shadow copy. That's a big one. I think they could change tactics later, right? So that's kind of what we're doing. That's kind of what happened, and I hope that you all found that educational. We'll give more as I find out more information for different ransomware. Keep you guys updated on the different tactics these guys are using and how to protect yourselves. And that has been a recap, a post-disaster recap by Andy. Thank you very much for attending, and I will see you all in the next video.
Thanks for watching. We hope this video has provided valuable information to you. Be sure to share this video with other small business owners to spread the word about the importance of cybersecurity. As always, don't forget to like and subscribe for more videos like this. If you want more information about cybersecurity, visit us at www.cybervenger.com.